You are listening to Travel to Tomorrow, a podcast on the future of travel and tourism.
Good morning, everyone. This is Mario Hardy, CEO of the Pacific Asia Travel Association. And today you're joining me for Travel to Tomorrow podcast. And my guest today is actually Robin Ingle. He's a Canadian entrepreneur, a specialist in insurance, healthcare, security. He's also an executive producer for movies in the movie industry, a tech fanatic as I am, and so much more. So, Robin, please, thank you for joining the show today. I'm really glad you're actually here. Another Canadian. It's very rarely that I actually get to interact with Canadians these days. And
thank you, Mario.
Really glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you, and good morning to you.
Good morning to you too. Robin, tell me a little bit more about yourself and your past, and more importantly, actually really curious, how does someone end up in the insurance business? Do you study for it? Do you actually something you plan as a career, or is just by accident?
I was actually born into it. So, I've got a typical Canadian background with my family. My father grew up in southern Ontario on a farm. And during the Depression, he moved north with his cousins to work in the mining industry in Sudbury, Northern Ontario. He met my mother, who was an immigrant to Canada from Finland, and they got together and, they had 4 children. I'm the youngest by far, but my father decided instead of being blue collar, instead of being a miner and a lumberjack and all these physical trades, in the mid 40s, just after World War II, he decided to get an education and learn insurance. And in 1946, they started an insurance company in Canada, providing health insurance to new immigrants to Canada. And after World War II, there were a lot of new immigrants coming in, especially from Europe. And there was no social system in Canada. So one of the first products they created was this temporary health insurance for immigrants. And then they created travel insurance products. And I grew up in that family. So across the dinner table, I learned about mobility insurance and people from every different country. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, I must say, actually, Robin, that the insurance world is a complete mystery to me, and it probably is actually to too many people trying to understand the science behind it and how we actually determine risk and how premiums are actually calculated, and all of this seems so complex for most of us who actually are not part of this world. How did you actually get into understanding all that complexity?
Well, I really think it helped because my family was into it. But I'm also a serial entrepreneur. So I never rest easy. So I always tried to do many different things, but I always came back to the insurance. And what I like about insurance is you're actually providing financial protection to other people. And you can do it by assessing the risk. And assessing the risk is really understanding what kind of risk management your client is doing for their asset or for themselves. What are they capable of? And it's interesting. I learned very quickly how to provide risk to what you would think would be a high risk. So people climbing Mount Everest, for example, I insured over the years from the 80s to the late 90s, all of the major expeditions up Mount Everest. And these were serious expeditions. These aren't travel tourists who aren't trained properly. We even ended up insuring Marc Garneau when he was in outer space. He was on the space shuttle. So, that type of a trip interruption or would be very costly for us.
Yeah, repatriation.
Yes, the repatriation would be enormous. Yes. Yeah.
Very interesting.
I think it's interesting, though. You should understand, and consumers need to understand that insurance companies, they deal with risk all the time, the potential that could happen, but they are also very risk adverse. So they really want to make sure that anything that they're going to provide coverage for, that there is an ability for them to make a profit. So they will always look at what are the processes and protocols that you have. Where are you going and what are you doing and how much knowledge do you have? So there's a lot of different factors that go into it. And you can really find coverage for anything you want to do in anywhere you want to go. It's just you have to look sometime. You have to be a really good consumer.
Good. Robin, can you tell us a little bit more about I know you're involved in many different businesses, as you mentioned before, you're a serial entrepreneur, but the core of your business today. Just tell us a little bit more about your group and different businesses within that group at the moment.
So we have two different areas, and everything I've been involved in has something to do with mobility and travel. One side of the business is where I'm a partner with a French company. We provide travel insurance products, expatriate insurance, international student insurance products, and we do high risk, so kidnap, war, sports, adventure. And we also provide emergency travel medical assistance services globally. We deal with almost 144 different languages. We work 24 hours, 7 days a week, and we have 4 major hubs around the world. One is Paris, another is Canada. We also have Dubai, and then we have Shanghai. And with that business, we operate in 155 countries with 22 major operation centers. So that business, travel insurance, mobility insurance, I've been in that for 40 years, like I said, growing up with my family. And the other side of my business is technology, where we build mobile applications and web portals, helping people understand and navigate complex issues like healthcare, travel, security, especially duty of care, where you're protecting individuals, employees, travelers on a tour group. And those types of products, we actually have created some really neat applications. And I know you are too, Mario. I'm a geek, so I have to admit it. I've got a technology background. I was in the security business in the 80s and 90s doing counterterrorism work, building neat little James Bondy products, countermeasures, listening devices, different kinds of satellite transmission devices. So as the world changed, I was there with these kind of solutions and great teams of people. And we're doing the same thing today. And we're actually very far ahead at creating applications to help travel start again in this safe, seamless journey that travelers will have, and organize all of the protocols and processes that they will face, including border crossings, airport access, airline access, and hotel access. So we're trying to make it through technology and the digital applications, make it easier for a traveler to travel.
Good. Well, we'll come back to the current situation, COVID-19, in a few minutes, but I also wanted to ask you something that you and I actually discussed a few weeks ago offline on the future of insurance business, or insurtech also. And to what I believe is actually something that is really needed in that sector is disruption. We've seen some businesses around the world coming up with models that are actually excessively simplified, specifically for the millennials, who have even more challenges than people my age trying to understand the need for insurance. A debate I've been having with my children now for quite some time already, for them to actually get themselves protected with insurance, is just do not understand why they need to have this. And when they were looking at the website trying to understand, they said, "Oh, it's too complicated," they gave up. What do you think of the future of insurtech is?
Well, it's interesting that you talk about it, and you're totally right. Disruption is a major major direction that has to go in a lot of enterprise companies, including the financial institutions, insurance companies, even something you've seen in media. You know, you need to change the dynamic and bring technology and appeal to all potential stakeholders or audiences. And I think the insurance industry, because of compliance, the same as financial institutions, have been very, very old-fashioned in their approach. One of the things I did back in 2006, and it was by accident, I had a very large international insurance company, a Canadian one, but they have major assets in Asia, ask for help in creating a healthcare platform and integrating all of these sponsored health programs for employees with different kinds of employer groups that they were insuring. And we built the platform with over 100,000 pages of content, searchable directories, helping people navigate the healthcare system. But we also built it in through mobile apps to additional products and services at the right time. You know, when you have a life event, you're getting married, you're having a child, there's a death in the family, you have senior parents, that's when you should be notified that there's a product to help you with financial consequences. And explain it in such a way that you really understand how to deal with it, because financial literacy and health literacy is very weak globally. A lot of people don't understand what kind of coverage or non-coverage or what are the rules with your credit card that you get, because you don't read it. And for the last 30 years, one of the things I've used is creating communication to our customers about what the fine print is, how do you read a policy, and making it as simple as possible. And that's another thing with insurance. They make it complex. There's too many clauses and too many words, and they can simplify. And I think that right across the insurance industry, there's a path number of these companies are trying to take to do that. But a digital property will help you get there faster. A mobile application, for example, for your automobile insurance, where you can compare products. And then when you buy it, if you have a claim, you can take a picture of the claim and input the claim automatically to your insurance company. You can take a picture of your license, and then they can actually quote you insurance with the type of car. There's ways of simplifying it, and technology can do that.
I've seen some of your application on the travel assistance, and I think you have one called Travel Navigator, if I'm not mistaken, and you have a couple of others.
Yeah.
And there's one specifically which I thought was actually really fascinating, where you had satellite data and could highlight actually potential risk of either earthquake or other situations happening around the world. Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Sure. And this came from a company that we merged into our company, Travel Navigator and Novus Health. Great group of people, brilliant. Many of them worked in major tech companies like Microsoft and IBM and with government agencies. And the product is called Near Threat. And what they do is they take over 4.5 billion bits of data regularly during the day, directly from satellite telemetry, from the World Health Organization, the CDC, from European agencies, and they're pulling this data in from these multiple sources into an analytical engine, and then mapping it around the world into a geomap format. So you can actually go down to neighborhoods and see what kind of risks are around a property or around a person. So if you're tracking or tracing a person, I know this sounds, again, kind of James Bondy, but there is a lot of purposes for this. So let's say you're going to build a hotel and you'd like to know what's going on now, but also we can go back in many places around the world up to 100 years of data on the weather conditions, on flooding, on typhoons, on hurricanes. We can look at fires. So when you start looking at it, do you want to invest in that area, or do you want to move it over to another area? Including things like in the Yucatan Peninsula, if there's an algae bloom on a regular basis, how often does it happen? So this kind of data is very helpful. And we're now taking that really high-end data for institutions, and we sell that to institutions or organizations, companies that have a lot of investments in assets around the world. But we're taking that and now putting it into our Travel Navigator application to add or augment our travel warnings. You know, a lot of times people make a misunderstanding. For example, terrorism is really, in effect, a very minor issue to people when they travel. It's disastrous and terrible when it happens in that one location, but it is very, very low risk because you have so many travelers, and this is pre-COVID, so many travelers, that is a minor thing. But natural disasters may not be. Civil unrest. Look at any kind of political issues that are happening. So this kind of software can actually provide that down to the layperson, and we can provide filters. So we cover right now about 80 different threats, right down to criminal activity. We have about 650 overlays, which include all the hotels in the world, all of the power plants. All of this kind of information is in the database, and we can add additional pieces into it. So, you know, and put a filter for a regular traveler where they just want to know maybe they want to know where the hospitals are. Maybe they'd like to know where entertainment facilities are, and then know if there's any kind of risk from COVID, and we track that. Disease matrix, any kind of things like that, we will follow.
Excellent. I've got a little bit of contentious questions to ask you. It's something that I've actually had debates with friends, and it became actually some very heated debate at some point, and something we hear in the media quite often today. You understand the risk probably better than most of us, and I've heard this statement, actually heard it again this morning in the media, about that we need to do a trade-off between health and the health of the economy in order to move forward. What's your view on that?
Well, so first of all, we have a large medical professional staff, and we're in the medical healthcare business. Having a vaccine is far away for COVID. And I should point out that pandemics were one of the top 10 crises that could happen when you're dealing with crisis management. I do a lot of seminars globally on crisis management, on resilience. You know, I work with the Resilience Council. I do talks with World Travel and Tourism Council, for example. Pandemics are top. There are regional pandemics like Ebola, MERS, SARS. COVID is different, and we technically do not have a vaccine today for the common cold, which is a coronavirus. We don't have for MERS or SARS. There are a lot of people, if it's going to happen, there are a lot of companies focused on it, a lot of money on it, but it may not happen for a while. And the governments and regular people cannot live for too long without having a traditional economy build. The problem, though, is people really do have to take precaution, because this illness does spread. And if you're in a vulnerable part of the population, it can really affect you. And the effects that go beyond recovery are unknown. So I do believe we've got to get back to living our lives, but our lives in a slightly different way. We have to wear masks. And, you know, one nice thing about being in Asia, it isn't so hard to wear a mask. You know, my son lives in Chiang Mai, and you and I have talked about this, and I've traveled to all over Asia in the past. And if you had a cold or you had the flu or you weren't feeling great, you put a mask on. And seeing people in masks, or even the environment, you know, when the crops are burning and the pollution is heavy, you wear a mask. We have to do that. We have to wash our hands. We have to be hygienic. We shouldn't touch our face. There's a bunch of things we should do to minimize the risk. One of the great things I saw today was the WHO and many other healthcare professionals are saying that people that are asymptomatic, not showing signs of symptoms, may not be the ones passing the illness. And if they are, they're very rare. So that is actually a good step. They're finding out a lot of information about COVID. I just hope the politics doesn't get in the way to hide information or slow down the vaccine or treatment, different kinds of therapeutics to help lessen the illness. We're also seeing some really good signs that the illness is lessening now, in meaning that the healthcare professionals understand how to manage it better. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to go on a ventilator, because the ventilator can actually cause a lot of damage. So there's some interesting things coming, and with knowledge comes power. And I think you'll find in the next couple of months, we've only been 3 months in the rest of the world. China's been in there earlier. But when we recognize it, I think it took all the governments off guard. They weren't prepared. There was a lot of chaos around it. And as things start organizing better, I think we'll be able to get through this.
I was asked yesterday on the live streaming about, what did I find the most difficult throughout this crisis so far? And I think, reflecting on this today, I realized actually that the most difficult thing is the uncertainty, the unknown.
Yes.
The fact that actually no one really understands this virus. And the situation is so volatile. At the very early stage of a crisis, I was trying to write a blog to communicate with our members, and I would go to my desk, start to writing some ideas, put some thoughts together. Next morning, get it ready to be published, and then realize it was out of date. It didn't make any sense anymore. These words that I actually wrote the day before were completely meaningless today. And to a point where actually I said, well, should I stop? And I have to communicate. I have to say something. And it was really a struggle to every day to figure out, well, what should I say? How do I comfort people? How do I give them hope that there's an end to this, that the industry will come back and recover at some point? And I'm sure many other people around the world in our sector felt exactly the same way, kind of hopeless for a period of time, until we wake up one morning and say, hey, we got to do something. We got to wake up and actually move forward.
Yes.
Because as you said, the vaccine is possibly months, if not years away. And we can't just be staying at home like this forever. We're going to go back to some form of normality. And I say some form because the back to where we were before is probably unlikely for a very long time, if not ever. It brings me to a few questions around, COVID-19 and also insurance coverage, which is a concern that actually been going to my mind for weeks already. Because we've experienced this in Thailand. When we had the political situation here, instability in Thailand, Thailand was actually put on what they call the red alert in terms of travel advisories, which meant that actually most travel insurance, if not all of them, would not actually insure people if they were traveling to Thailand. And it was like a double impact on the number of travelers not coming to Thailand. One, for business purposes. The MICE industry during that period of time was nearly completely disappeared because businesses would not allow their employees to travel to Thailand without insurance. Leisure travel obviously was down too, but a little bit less. And for that specific reason, to a point where actually Thailand came out and say, it's okay, you can still come to Thailand, we'll take care of you. We'll look after you. We've got a good healthcare system here in Thailand. But how do we move forward from here? Because at the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, none of the travel insurance will actually cover people to travel overseas. One, because of COVID, but also because of travel restrictions mostly.
Right. You've got a good point. Remember I said before is that insurance companies cover risk, but they're risk adverse. I've seen that all my life, and I never agreed with it. There is a way to figure it out. Back in the end of March, it was interesting. Our reinsurance companies in Europe all panicked and put pressure on us to say that they would not cover COVID or pandemics. They wanted clauses put into our policies. Now, just so the audience knows, is most insurance companies, especially when they're insuring globally, is that they will get reinsurance. That's insurance on their insurance. They take a percentage of the risk and parse it off to others. So we had to convince them, because we didn't have losses. The reason they were scared was because they had property and casualty losses. That's an insurance that is not human insurance. They had losses for event cancellation. They had losses for business interruption. They had all of these big losses. One of our reinsurers, within 1 month after that, so I think by April 15th, they were able to say that they had lost $2 billion on event cancellation. Big events that were all canceled. So that was a big concern on us. We had to work very hard in March and April, and we finally got new reinsurers. We had to get new reinsurers to take the risk, because we could show that all of our health insurance products for travelers and students did not have a problem. We actually managed the risk really well. We did have COVID cases, but we managed it. And a lot of countries actually took part of that risk for public health reasons. Meaning, if you were sick in a certain country, they would pull you into their hospitals or their healthcare system. And for us, the costs were not big. In some countries, and like the UAE, they did depend on the insurance companies to provide the coverage for it, but it wasn't big. So we ended up getting coverage for COVID. Now we have coverage for COVID and pandemics for all of our products. But you are right on the second part. In regular travel insurance, they have built in a clause that said if there is a government warning for your government, so Foreign Affairs in the UK or Canada, or State Department in the US, then the insurance company will not cover you for the insurance that they've got in your benefits. So that is a concern. And that's where we have to work on those kind of things. And we have with expat insurance. So with expat insurance, we don't have trouble. It's with the short-term travel insurance. And I actually have a call tomorrow with some of our UK risk partners to talk about this, because I've been approached by a number of regions of the world, countries, and some large corporate entities to provide them with a basic blanket health insurance coverage for any of their passengers or guests, and also to provide them with repatriation coverage in case something happened, to send them home. Because that's one of the big problems that happened with COVID too. People were stuck, in other countries, and they couldn't get out. So we had to look at designing a product to fit that need. But that is an ongoing issue. And I just did a report for World Travel and Tourism Council, and I talked about that. Is today, every company out there and individual should review your policies of insurance, the ones you've got today, your property and casualty on your assets, your business continuity insurance, your any kind of insurance products you've got, including your health insurance and employee benefits, to make sure that there's no additional clauses that are related to pandemics. And if you're buying a product now going forward, make sure that you ask about that. Consumers of insurance are not really good at asking the right questions. If you have a special need, like you need coverage for COVID, or you have a pre-existing medical condition, or you're going to a place and you're going to do activities, you got to make sure that you're getting the right coverage. So ask questions and don't be afraid.
Good, a very good point, and thank you for clarifying this for us, because it is something that I think many people have got in their minds at the moment as countries start to reopen. Certainly here in Thailand, domestic tourism is already reopened a few weeks ago. Most hotels in the resort areas surrounding Bangkok, near the beaches or the mountain, are actually practically full until the end of
Wow.
June or early July. So, people are desperate to get out. I'm desperate to get out. I live in a 24th floor of a high-rise building and really want to go back to nature. Sadly, actually, the places I really want to go, they're all full. So I'm going to have to wait for a little bit longer. But I think it's
Do you know,
we
Mario, that is one thing that was really affects everybody. I think the isolation and the lockdown affected our psyche, our human instinct to connect with others. Zoom calls and all these digital calls, they're great. But, and I got to tell you personally, I live in London, UK, and I live in Toronto, Canada. And I'm in Toronto right now because I came back here beginning of March. But my girlfriend is in the UK. I haven't been able to go back. Hopefully I'll go back at the end of June. But we've been doing a virtual relationship, and that's really difficult. And I hear that from a lot of people. Their family members are in different places. They're nervous about them. That isolation was really tough.
Yeah,
Very tough.
we're in a similar situation. We have one son who's in the UK, one in France at the moment. My family also back in Canada. We've not been back to Canada now for this is the second year. We were planning to go this summer. We were planning to spend time with our sons also to go back and visit family in Canada, and it looks very unlikely that we'll be able to go in 2020. So it's really difficult. We miss we miss them. We miss interaction with family, with friends also, which has been difficult. And but the nature part actually has really been something challenging for me. I need to see different green colors, blue colors, rather than cement all the time.
I used your story. I used your story yesterday, and thank you for telling me like early on because you helped me with my son. But I thank you for telling me that story because I had people telling me that they were stuck in these small, like in North America, especially Toronto, where it's a high priced real estate and you got condominium towers and all this. You've got these young people in the downtown area, and I'm right in downtown Toronto, that have these 500 square feet little bachelor apartments, and they're not facing anywhere. And, they may not have a balcony. And, that's just very claustrophobic. So I used your story about realizing that if you had known that you would have gone to green space, right? So
yes, I would. And my alternative for the time being was to move my treadmill in front of a TV and put BBC Earth and just pretend I'm actually running in nature. So kind of
did the same thing.
But
I did the same thing. I have a treadmill in my condo, and it's facing the CN Tower, this big tower, and I can look out the window and do that. But it's just not the same. You like to get out with the trees and the forest. And, yeah.
Yep, exactly the same. It brings me to my next topic I wanted to discuss a little bit with you too, is about what's your vision for the future of travel?
Well,
and
talk
also maybe a little bit of. Yeah, please. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say our conversation just now tells me that travel will be great again, and I hate to use that phrase, but it will be because we miss it, and I was on calls with the travel industry right in March, like you were too, and right at the beginning, and I heard everybody so deflated and dejected and upset and talking about, they wanted to talk about how they could market things. And I said, no, like market the spiritual side of travel. And I know it sounds corny, but that's one thing I love. And I know you do too, is seeing other people, other cultures, other places, the nature we're talking about, or the mountains and the sea and the ocean. That is going to bring travel back. And I think we all have to be conscious of that within the travel industry today. And tourism ministries have to understand that. We also, and I know sustainability is very important. That's something we all push, PADA and WTTC and UNWTO, all of us push that. Now we have a chance to make change. And I believe we can. Let's go a little slower now. Let's think this out. Let's not hurt the environment. Let's try to figure out, we're not going to be perfect. None of us are going to be perfect. But now we have a chance. I believe we really do have a chance, because travel will not go back to the way it was in 2019 for the next little while. But we can build the pillars, the foundation of strong, sustainable travel. And I really do believe that people will pay a little more to have a better experience and to feel safe and secure. I do believe that in my heart, from my insurance background and from talking to large organizations. When I go talk to schools and all those things, the things about travel that they really like is that cultural mix, seeing other people. And if we do this right, I believe we can actually, and I know this is a little bit spiritual, we can make the world a better place. And I tell this to students all the time, especially international students. The more we travel, the more we see that other people are not different. They're very similar. We all have the same feelings. We want hope in our lives, and we want our children to do well, and we want to learn. We want to have money in our pocket. Like, all of that is similar. The cultural wrapping is not that deep. It just makes us a little bit different. Our language is different, but we are the same people, and we've just done things differently. And I think that, I know this is utopian, but I really believe this, and it's something I've always talked about, and even our student groups and our travel groups, we talked about this, is we do this right now. If we look at all the things that were done not right, that were wrong in the past, we can stop the overcrowding. We can do something about the environment. We can understand that the coral reefs are important, that the ocean is important, and have influence on the other parts of the areas that affect what we do in the travel industry. I think 10% of the economy globally is travel and tourism, and I think it's actually more than that, because travel and tourism allows people to have a job that don't have a very deep education, but they happen to be good at dealing with other people, and they learn in the job. There are so many people I've known that sort of grew up in the hotel industry, or grew up at a resort, started becoming entertainers, or learned how to speak different languages. I just think it's a huge resource, travel and tourism, to the world.
When I was actually younger, teenager, my mother went to see a fortune teller. Not that I necessarily believed in it, but she went to actually see one, and she said, "Oh, your son's going to spend his life actually traveling the world." And we kind of laughed about this. I wasn't studying to work in travel. I was actually studying to be a stockbroker. I did a lot of other work and etc., but never actually, travel was not an area or an industry I was actually thinking of actually going into. Which I didn't for part of my life. I work in different sectors in technology, but I enjoy traveling. And a lot of people actually said, "Oh, aren't you going to get bored when you retire?" I said, "No, because I'll travel. There's so many places in the world that I haven't seen yet that I want to see." One of the most frustrating part about this situation of COVID-19 at the moment is that I had a goal of achieving at least 100 countries, and I'm at 99. And was meant to be actually reaching my 100 countries within these months. Now, actually, the good part about it is I had actually no idea which country should be number 100. I said it should be meaningful. I just don't know where yet. So give me more time to figure it out. Something for me to think.
I've had the opportunity to hear you speak, and I've heard the passion in your voice when you talk about it. And you talk about travel, and you talk about the areas of influence of Pat. I've heard you speak, so I totally understand you, and I feel the same way, you know. And I wanted to go to Bhutan. I was planning on going to Bhutan this summer because I met the minister in Macau at the GTEF function. And my daughter had 2 years ago, my daughter was a teacher, my youngest. She had actually taught teachers in Bhutan, and I loved it. I wanted to go. And
I've been 5 times in Bhutan, and
rub it in.
always looking forward to go back. So we'll talk offline. I'll give you some tips. As we're getting to a close, I do want to address two other things very briefly. But one, film production. Where does that come from, and what's your passion around that area?
Well, it's funny. I'm very much an academic, scientific, digital technology person, but my background is actually graphic arts, design, and music. So that's what I took when I was a kid and when I was young. When we started building these healthcare, travel, and security platforms, the Travel Navigator, for example, the companies that purchased our products didn't know how to market them. It was like they ticked a box and they go, okay, we've got something to differentiate ourselves. But we knew that they had to promote it. So I hired, this is back in 2011, I hired a German woman who was a documentary film producer who worked in many different countries around the world. She spoke a couple of different languages. And what I said is, look, let's do video production and digital media, help our clients, we'll sell it to them. Then we had a bunch of people that were very creative, and you have to let them create. So I let them enter contests, I let them enter documentary film festivals, and then it became Sisu production. And Sisu is a Finnish word, and my mother's background is Finland. Sisu means your guts, your core, your grounding, you know, who you are. And it was very fitting for this. And now it's actually bloomed. We just launched on Amazon Prime, on Google Play and iTunes, a documentary about Alain Robert, the French Spider-Man, who was one of the best free climbers in the world. And then he became a free building climber. So he climbed every building you can think of. I think he's done 250 different largest skyscrapers in the world with no ropes, no nothing. And he's a great character. He lives in Bali. He's got his second family there. He's from France. He's a great character. We did the documentary, and then we got a distributor and we launched it, and it was our first real commercial enterprise. And then my girlfriend, she is actually an action film star. She's been in movies like Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One and The Huntsman and Guardians of the Galaxy and that kind of things. And she's a martial artist and a fighter, and she's beautiful. But she's got a film production company called Dream More Films, and she's writing her own scripts, and she's very creative, and it was great. And we've been together now 3 years, so it's kind of, you know, that feeds me. The Sisu production and Dream More Films feeds my creative side that maybe I downplayed as I built businesses over the last 30 years. So it's fun. I like it. Yeah.
I'll certainly actually look it up on online and look the documentary for Alain Robert. I've seen some of his stunts that he's actually done on climbing some buildings, and very, very brave individual. I'm not sure I'd be prepared to do that, but fascinating what he's been doing. So thank you for sharing this. We've got to talk at least for a few seconds about tech. We both have this passion. So what is the latest gadget or piece of tech you've actually got?
Well, it's kind of funny. I did a merger with the insurance company, the French insurance company, in 2017. So what did I do? I go out and I buy a Segway wheel, and then I turn around and I I purchased 3D goggles and a whole system, high-end system, so that my tech guys could play with it. But it was really for me to play, because I actually play video games still. And during COVID, I ended up getting a PlayStation 4 and a Switch. And I've been going back. I haven't had time before. So this is a great way. I don't have my girlfriend around. I'm sort of locked down, and I don't want to think business all the time. So I'm playing video games. But I really believe in a lot of things, like augmented reality is a great thing. And we're experimenting with that. The big data. Now, I come from a security background, and I know how governments can abuse technology. But I do believe it's an enabler for human beings. And it's a way to communicate at every level with people that have different income, different capabilities. And I see my grandkids, for example, they're 2.5 and 7, using digital devices all the time. And it's so fast. And I've seen, I love anthropology too. And I've seen tribal groups who pick up quickly with tablets and computers faster than they can with regular old-fashioned learning. So you think about the opportunities you can do. Now, we have to gauge ourselves though. But augmented reality is great. You walk down the street, you're looking through a device, you have glasses, you do these things. And I've spoken at VR conferences, the virtual reality conferences and these kind of things. I think that can help travel. It can help you relive a feeling. It helps with PTSD. There's so many things that can help with mental wellness, mental health. So that's what I love, the monitoring your blood pressure, your chronic illnesses. So there you go.
I was actually amongst one of the first person in Asia to get Microsoft HoloLens. It was actually really funny because I actually met the chief technology officer of Microsoft based in Singapore, the CTO for Asia, and he had never seen one before. So it was actually quite
okay,
interesting.
that's cool.
It's a very, very interesting piece of technology. It's the first time you put on your head, it's just you're in a completely different world. It's just really amazing.
The wearable. I was just going to say the wearables. There's used to be a professor at the University of Toronto, Steve Mann. He's at Stanford now. Steve was one of the pioneers of wearables back 35 years ago. He had these big helmets and the backpack, and he would go away with it. And he was behind a lot of like the Google glasses and other things that were there. And it's interesting the way he called it surveillance. So not surveillance, but surveillance. And it's you being able to visualize your environment and keeping track of everything. Just, these kind of characters that inspire others to build like those glasses that you were talking about. So I think it's amazing.
What's the one piece of tech you couldn't live without?
My cell phone. My mobile phone now. I've got 2 mobile phones I take with me, and I've got, I can do anything with them because they're always hooked up to different kinds of apps that I've got and our demos and everything else. But yeah, maybe too much.
One last question before we go. When this is all over, where will you and your girlfriend travel to for holidays?
Oh, I got to tell you, I love Asia. I love Thailand. I do want to see other places. I haven't been to Indonesia. I'd love to go to Indonesia. I want to go to Bhutan. I loved Japan. I love Taiwan. I love China. One thing I guess I really miss is the ocean. Part of my life, I grew up in Jamaica. My family, my father had a business there, and I would swim in the ocean all the time. I'm a fish. I love the ocean, and I have not been at the ocean for a while, so I miss it.
Good. Well, Robin, it's been a pleasure to actually get to know you today, and thank you for sharing all your insights with our audience. Again, a great pleasure to have you. Robin Ingle, a Canadian entrepreneur, specialist in travel assistance and security, film producer, tech addict. Again, great pleasure to have you today.
Thank you, Mario.